morning! Welcome to Sunday Morning Announcements with the Jocelyn Gray avatar. If you're with us on Facebook or YouTube, please subscribe to get notifications when we have new videos. If you're with us on Zoom, say hi in the chat. We'd love to say hello back. If you're with us in person, hello everybody here! And if this is your first visit, please sign the guest book either in the lobby or online at oakcliffuu.org/guest. A reminder, every Sunday morning at 9:30, one of our board members is available to answer your questions about the church. We hope you take advantage of this opportunity, either in person or online via Zoom. Today, Sarah Ricke takes the pulpit with The Work of Welcome. How can we be welcoming and hospitable? We hope you can stick around after the service today for Talkback, where we gather in a circle and discuss the service and related topics. For those online, see the Zoom chat at the end of the service for the meeting information. Next Sunday, we're bringing back Blessing of the Animals. On October 6th, we will celebrate the animal companions and neighbors that bless us with their presence. Please feel free to bring your well-behaved and well-managed pets to church. Pictures and mementos are also welcome for the altar. It would be great for this to be a multi-voice service. What are your stories about the special animals in your life? See Kathy Gray after church if you are interested in sharing. Also next Sunday, there will be a combined Coordinating Council/Worship Ministry meeting at 1:30 in Charity North and on Zoom. Then coming up the following Monday, UUCOC and Dallas Peace and Justice Center are co-hosting an event on campus on October 7th featuring author Sarah Toll, author of Crossing the Line, Finding America in the Borderlands. A reception at 6 p.m. will be followed at 7 p.m. by Sarah's presentation and book signing. Speaking of books, the Social Justice Ministry Reading Group will take this week off and then return with Solidarity is the Political Version of Love, Lessons from Jewish Anti-Zionist Organizing by Rebecca Vilkemerson and Alyssa Wise. See Mavis if you have any questions. And here's a special note from our administrative assistant, Rita, about an upcoming event.
Hey everybody! The planning team has begun work on this year's Haunted Forest. Eric, this isn't funny. The Haunted Forest is our biggest fundraiser of the year.
Oh, sorry.
We will need help passing out flyers, getting things out of the attic, setting up on the day of the event, tearing down after the event, and we will need trail guides, ghosts, and ghoulies to make our event scary fun. Yeah, that's the spirit. Get it? Spirit.
To sign up to help with the Haunted Forest, go to tinyurl.com/uucoc-hf-2024. There is also a wish list for items for the event, if you'd like to donate. You can find that at tinyurl.com/uucoc-hf-wishlist. Remember, all this and more is in your eBlast newsletter. Not receiving the eBlast? Just sign up at oakcliffuu.org/enews. It's that easy. Have you signed up but still aren't getting the eBlast? As our tech guy Scott says, don't forget to check your spam folder and make sure that news@oakcliffuu.org is in your contacts. Oh, one more thing. The VP debate will be Tuesday, October 1st at 8 p.m. Central Time. Who is game to join us for cheers and jeers and snacks in the Hope Common Room? Doors will open at 7. That's it for now. I hope you all have a great week.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff. We begin our service this morning by lighting our chalice. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of love, compassion, and forgiveness.
draw near. Spirit, draw near. Last verse. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near. One more time. Spirit, draw near. Good morning, everybody.
You are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week, or gleeful laughter has spilled out of your smiling mouth, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether you are feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether you have untold stories buried deep inside, or stories that have been forced beyond the edges of comfort, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether you have made promises, broken promises, or are renewing your promises, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whatever is on your heart, however it is with your soul in this moment, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. In this space of welcome and acceptance, commitment and recommitment of covenant and connection, let us worship together.
In our community, we take time each week to share what is in our hearts and on our minds. If your heart is heavy today, know that you don't have to bear the burden alone. Together, we offer comfort. For those online, if you'd like to share publicly what is in your heart, post it on the Zoom chat.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Together, our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Once again, for those online to share publicly, just post your joy in the Zoom chat.
We will have a responsive reading by Dory J. Summers. Let us enter into the circle of energy and love.
All are welcome here.
We are an inclusive community of faith and kindness, memory and hope.
All are welcome here.
We are a community with a deep and abiding trust in the promise of goodness in every human heart and soul.
All are welcome here.
We are a community of quest, where we gather to study and search.
All are welcome here.
We are a community of service, where the gifts we give and receive are compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and devotion.
All are welcome here.
We are a community of joy and laughter, where the worth of every individual is celebrated.
All are welcome here.
Our church has no creed that we all believe in. What we have is a covenant. Latin for come together, covenant means a solemn agreement, a promise of the heart regarding a course of action among parties. The practice of promising to walk together is the core of our faith. Simply put, it's a guide for the behavior we expect of ourselves and each other. We are bound together by the promises we make to one another. And we recite our covenant during every worship service. Will you stand as we recite our covenant this morning? Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life's abundance in service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus do we covenant together. Our sermon today is brought to Sir Ricke.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our church on this beautiful fall morning. Welcome. That is the theme of this month, isn't it? Welcome. And it can mean so many things. If you look in the dictionary, the definition of welcome, for the verb at least, is an instance or manner of greeting someone, usually implying a friendly or at least polite way of doing so. But the dictionary only provides the very beginning of what welcome really is. And I'm sure that when you heard the title of today's sermon, The Work of Welcome, you thought this was going to be some long, tedious list of things that we need to do. I'll get to that later. But before we do that, I want to tell you that when I first heard the theme of welcome, my thoughts immediately leapt to something very dear to my heart, very dear to my faith, and very, very old, as a matter of fact. Because when I heard the word welcome, my mind immediately leapt to the laws of hospitality. How you welcome a guest. In ancient Greece, these were the laws of xenia, or the laws of the stranger. And evoking the laws of hospitality is a sacred rite. A multitude of cultures have their own rules about welcoming guests, but the ancient Greeks were famous throughout the world for their own rules and their own hospitality. Their joy and their fervor in welcoming the stranger was renowned. Put forth by the gods of Olympus, Philoxena, or friend of the stranger, was a divine edict for the Greeks. It was so important, in fact, that one of the many titles of Zeus, the king of the gods of Olympus, was actually Zeus Xenia, Zeus the stranger. Because despite being the king of heaven, Zeus would often descend to earth, and one of his favorite pastimes, when he wasn't bothering women he shouldn't, was to disguise himself as a common or even destitute traveler and wander about to see who would welcome him and how. The rewards he granted his best hosts were legendary, as were the punishments he leveled at those who failed him. And this is most beautifully illustrated in a myth about a couple named Bacchus and Philemon. Now, if you've studied classical Greek mythology, you might have heard of it, but most people haven't. So rather than boring lists and me telling you what to do and how to be welcome, today I wanted to share with you this most ancient story. The myth of Bacchus and Philemon starts with Zeus as the king of the gods, and one more god, his son Hermes. Hermes is often known as the messenger of the gods, delivering news from Olympus, from the gods to each other, but also from Olympus down to the mortal realm, and back again from the mortal realm up to Olympus. Hermes was also the god of travelers, and he protected them and guided them safely on their way. So long ago, Hermes heard a strange prayer from one of the travelers that he was protecting. The traveler begged for aid as they walked through a hilly land called Phrygia, with a deep valley and steep cliffs, at the bottom of which was a small but wealthy town. But despite the wealth in the town, the traveler had been denied aid and had been forced to travel on without rest or food. It was odd and honestly a little bit inconceivable to Hermes. After all, the laws of hospitality were sacred in Greece. But then it happened again, another prayer from another traveler, and then again. Deeply concerned, Hermes brought this news to Olympus and to all of the gods. They were, of course, outraged, but none more so than his father Zeus. It was Zeus's edict, after all, and one that none of the other gods of Olympus, quarrelsome as they might be at times, had ever dared to contest. The laws of hospitality stated that humans should host the stranger with warmth and generosity, providing all that they could, heedless of either's wealth or class, and provide them with what they needed to continue on in their travels in safety and good health. It was one of his better ideas, if you've read anything about Zeus. So he thought, how dare these people defy him so on such an important matter? Zeus vowed to determine the truth of what was happening, and he had Hermes guide him down to the valley, where both gods assumed the guises of mortal men. Zeus used his powers to summon a mighty squall, drenching the land, and their divine investigation ensued. Now, in addition to being the king of heaven, Zeus was also the god of storms, so this was no meager drizzle. Sheets of rain fell in torrents, thunder and lightning lashed across the night-dark sky. The wind bent trees and blew branches clean off. No sane mortal would ever deny another shelter in such miserable weather. And yet, that is exactly what happened. The first house that Zeus and Hermes came to in Phrygia turned them away outright when the gods asked for food and rest from the rain. They latched the door firmly in the faces of the gods, leaving them standing alone in the cold and the wet. The next house turned them away as well, and then the next. Some houses didn't even bother to answer the door when the gods knocked. Latches locked and gates barred, even though it was clear that owners were home. Some houses even abused the gods, greeting them with kicks, insults, and even curses, and forcing them to flee. Little houses, big houses, even the mansions with their wealthy owners who lacked for nothing, all turned the gods away. 100 times Zeus and Hermes sought shelter from the people of Phrygia, and 100 times they were turned away. Finally, as they climbed their way out of the valley, away from the small town, there was only one house left to try before they were out of the valley completely. Now, the house was really more of an old hut, a tiny farmhouse, and it belonged to a poor elderly couple named Bacchus and Philemon. The wife, Bacchus, was outside when Zeus and Hermes approached. She took one look at the bedraggled travelers and urged them inside out of the horrendous storm with a giant smile. The house was so small, the door was so tiny, that Zeus and Hermes had to stoop to pass through it. But once inside, the husband Philemon greeted them just as warmly as his wife, and the couple offered up what little they could. Now, Bacchus and Philemon were poor, nearly destitute, really, with no gold and no family beside each other. The only thing they had of any real value to offer was a bit of bread, a small flagon of wine, what they could from their garden, and a single goose guarded their home. But Zeus and Hermes were offered the only 2 stools in the small hut so that they could sit down. Despite the storm, Bacchus managed to stir up some dying coals in the fireplace so that her guests could warm up and dry off. And her husband Philemon braved going out into the rain to pick vegetables from the garden so they might have the makings of a decent stew. A little bit of very precious salt pork went in with those vegetables that they braved the rain and the storm for. While they cooked, the couple chatted with the gods about anything and everything they could think of, trying to keep their guests occupied until the meal was ready. Philemon dragged out a small, wobbly table. Bacchus warmed water over the fire for them to wash. Everything they had, they gave their guests. They cut thick slices of bread from their single loaf, offered up olives and wild fruit, what little they had, in a single rough bowl. They poured their only flagon of wine equally between the 4 of them. And for long hours, Bacchus and Philemon entertained their guests as the rain came down again and again in black curtains. After the stew was finally ready, they served a little bit more fruit, a handful of nuts, and finally a single tiny honeycomb. And they talked on and on. Finally, Bacchus, she looked down at the wine jug. She'd been so sure she'd emptied it, and yet it was full. Again, she poured it out equally between the 4 of them. But by the time she set it back down on her wobbly little table, it was already filled to the brim. And suddenly, Bacchus realized who her guests really were. She rushed to pull her husband aside, and Bacchus and Philemon were horrified with themselves that they had served their gods such a meager meal. Immediately, Philemon reached for the only thing the couple they had left, their prized guard goose. Without hesitation, he went out back into the storm to catch the goose, while Bacchus spoke loudly, trying to distract their guests from the inevitable squawking. But the couple were old, so Philemon was slow and he stumbled as he walked. And if you've ever met a goose, you know that they're not slow. You also know that they're not stupid. And this goose knew what was up right away. So the goose began honking and flapping loudly, rushing around that wet, muddy barnyard to escape poor Philemon. It dashed to and fro and then under his legs into the house, seeking shelter behind the only two beings who could save it, honking from behind Zeus and Hermes. Aghast, the couple stammered apologies, but the gods only laughed. Zeus and Hermes stood to reveal themselves and assured the couple that there was no need to kill the beloved goose. They had seen how deep the couple's love of the stranger, the fellow Xenia, truly was. The gods assured Bacchus and Philemon that they had found no fault in the meal that they had been provided, and were pleased that the couple followed the law of hospitality so devoutly. They had been given far more than they'd hoped for, especially after the unwelcome way their neighbors had greeted them. Zeus and Hermes led the couple outside, where the storm had finally passed, and up the steep hills to the top of the valley. There, Bacchus and Philemon looked over their home, only to gasp in shock. Where the town used to be was now only an enormous dark lake. Only their little hut, high in the hills, was still standing. The gods had punished the unwelcoming neighbors. Then the gods turned to offer Bacchus and Philemon a reward for their own kind welcome. Anything they wanted, they said. The old couple were humble and asked only for two things: a temple for them to properly worship the gods, and that the two elderly lovers might die at the same time, never having to live without the other. The gods granted those wishes. Right there where they stood, a grand temple rose on the side of the cliff, filled with everything Bacchus and Philemon would ever need to worship the gods of Olympus properly and to live comfortably for the rest of their days. And when the couple finally did pass, the gods honored that last wish as well. Bacchus and Philemon were together until the very end, holding each other close. And when they did die, the gods did not compel them into Tartarus. They did not send them down to the underworld like every other mortal. Instead, Bacchus and Philemon were transformed into trees, a linden and an oak, that twisted around each other, roots and branches intertwined, so that the generous, hospitable, welcoming couple could remain together even in death. And for centuries afterwards, those trees were treasured by the people who came later to repopulate the valley, adorned with ribbons and treated as part of the temple complex. They became a symbol of the couple's love, their fidelity, and the kind way that they welcomed the strangers who turned out to be gods. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that story. But the lesson I really want people to take away is the idea that the gods, the divine, might be found in anyone if you bother to look. It's true that most people who show up unannounced on your doorstep aren't likely to be Zeus. No offense. But he's not the only god, known to travel the mortal realm in disguise. Odin, Vishnu, even angels from the Bible, many gods from many pantheons around the world have done so, testing humans, seeking truth, seeking the divine themselves. As Unitarian Universalists, we try very hard to see that divinity in every person. They don't need to be gods. Just being human is enough. That little piece of holy is still there, shining, if we care to look for it. And with that little spark comes our duty to be hospitable, to welcome the stranger, to be welcoming. And it's more important now than ever. Now, if you look on the seats around you, there's a huge packet of very dense paper. That was almost your sermon this morning. Aren't you glad I decided to give you a myth instead? But these papers are from the UUA, and they are the guidelines for how to be a welcoming congregation. Now, a welcoming congregation is specifically targeted at the LGBTQ community, and it gives you all the different ways that a congregation needs to act in order to get certified as a welcoming congregation, and all the ways that a congregation needs to act in order to renew their welcoming congregation certification. You're supposed to do it every year. It's a good list. I encourage you to look it over. Because with everything going on, it's more important now than ever to be welcome in a world that is not welcoming. Not just to the LGBTQ community, but to everyone going through the storm. Because it's definitely stormy out there, even with the bright sunshine. Far-right fanatics are using an ever-increasing number of book bans to try to desperately erase anything and everything that they don't agree with, which is a lot. From feminism to racial equality to other religions, and especially the LGBTQ issues. The loss of Roe versus Wade has allowed conservative-led states to gut women's reproductive rights. Women are fleeing those states to get basic health care when they can, and dying all too often when they can't. As tensions keep rising in the Middle East, people are once again slinging around both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I will not rage about Gaza to you today. I won't. But it's still happening. Anti-trans and anti-drag laws have made life so miserable in the places that they've been enacted that trans and non-binary suicides are up over 70% in some of those places. There's a whole study in Nature Human Behavior. They ran it on planettrans.org. There are so many people who are left feeling unwelcome, being unwelcomed in today's society. And unfortunately, we live in one of those conservative-led states. So it is our neighbors who are being unwelcome to the people who need that welcome the most. It is our neighbors refusing shelter to other perfectly fine human beings in the midst of this storm. It is our neighbors who built that storm. It is our neighbors who greet the stranger not with kindness, but with kicks and curses. So it is all that more important for us to to be like Bacchus and Philemon, to see the stranger and react with love and generosity, to welcome. Now, normally this is the part of the RE sermon where I break you off into small groups to discuss things. But this ran rather long, and I've been told to keep this a little bit shorter. So I would like to keep the discussion for talkback today. But between now and then, I hope you take the moment to read over the welcoming congregation information that I've provided. And I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Did our congregation live up to its promises as a welcoming congregation this year for the LGBTQ community? Did you yourself personally? And if we took these requirements to be a welcoming congregation and applied those same standards to other ethnic and minority groups that have been actively excluded or ostracized, would we pass then? Would we pass if those standards were applied to women in the face of their loss of rights? For Black people? For Indigenous people? For all the people abroad that we swore responsibility to and then failed to live up for? Were we welcoming?
In the spring of 2021, UUCOC added a second covenant to our weekly worship service. Our Widening the Circle of Concern work takes its name from an in-depth UUA study that was published in 2020 and with which we have been actively engaged ever since. The words of this covenant are in your order of service and will also appear on the screen. We, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff, commit ourselves to the study and dismantling of racism and oppression within our congregation. We commit our congregation and ourselves to the work of anti-racism and anti-oppression. We commit ourselves to listening, to learning, and to action. When we fail, we commit ourselves to trying again and again. We covenant to begin this work and continue until all of us can truly say that we are a beloved community of justice, equity, and compassion. The gifts you make in our weekly offering or through your pledge, your annual pledge to the church, represent far more than lines on a spreadsheet. Your contributions are a tangible commitment to the mission and vision of this congregation. The offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something that we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. If you're a member and wish your cash contribution to go towards your pledge, please use the envelope in the basket and put your name on it for that purpose. You can also donate through a text or our website. Those details are on the order of service.
Together
Go Forth in Simplicity by Sam Trumbore. Go forth in simplicity. Find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous and before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Last verse. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. You'll have a beautiful day.
We close our service by extinguishing for the moment our chalice. And with our theme of the day, let me just remind you that the chalice became the symbol of the UU Church because it was used back in World War II. A light in the window, or a chalice in the window, was a sign that that was a home in which Jews were welcome. So, a welcoming, safe place has been part of our mission for quite some time. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.